providing services. Thank you. Which has been providing services to housing and food insecure Humboldt residents since 1991. For the last 8 years, she has led Arcata House Partnership's work to provide shelter and affordable housing to people in Humboldt County. She's worked to develop affordable housing and provide supportive services to the most needy for 40 years. So she should be really good at it, and she is. Thank you so very much, Darlene. It's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure to be here. It is always an honor to talk about the amazing work that our staff does. But when we talk about the amazing work our staff does, that implies that there's so much need out there to do this work. And so today I want to talk a little about what we're doing, the kinds of need we have here, what Arcata House Partnership is doing, what we're doing in conjunction with other partners, and how as a community, what we're doing to try and address this what always feels like just this overwhelming, how do we ever tackle such a big problem? So thank you for that. I'm going to share my screen. When I share my screen, I can't always tell if people are, have questions in the chat. Please feel free. I see some supporters here. I see some of our neighbors are here. I see some of our partners are here, and some people who know what we do. And maybe there's some new people here who have never heard of Arcata House Partnership. So let me tell you all about us. So as Jane said, we are here to, serve people who are the most needy in our community. It's really difficult sometimes to even understand how we got to this place. And I'm not here to try and tell you that I have all the answers to why we get here, or why as a country we have so many people who are homeless, or what all the answers are, but we're doing a lot to address them. Let's see. In 2022, as most of you know, there was a point in time count, and it showed that there were approximately 1,309 unsheltered people who were counted at that time. We know from our staff on the streets that we suspected it was closer to 3,000 people who are on the streets right now. A huge portion, nearly 50% of the people reported that they had some kind of serious mental illness, and 49% surveyed reported a substance use disorder. Now, they may be the same 48, 49%. They may be very different. What the 2022 point in time count showed is that Eureka had reported 498 people, McKinleyville Blue Lake 32, Arcata Samoa 356, Ferndale Fortuna Table Bluff 64, Garberville 52, Hoopa, Miranda, they were smaller. But what we know about the point in time count, right, is that how many people were counted at that one day at that specific time. And so, we know, in those of us who work in this field know that that's not a very accurate count, but it's the count that HUD wants us to use in our reporting. What we do know is that there's really three major groups of homeless that most of us in this field talk about. There's the transients, the people who come and go. We haven't seen as many transients lately because the paw industry is a little more regulated, and there just isn't very much of that travel. Although we still do see some of that travel, they are not the people who would come to an organization like Arcata House Partnership for support. Temporary or transitional really are families, single people, older adults, people fleeing domestic violence, sex trafficking, people who are at imminent risk of becoming homeless or who will soon lose their primary nighttime residence, people who are becoming homeless for the very first time. We're getting a lot of calls from older adults who are becoming homeless for the very first time because they're on a fixed income and their rents went up and they're, having a difficult time. And then the third group, which is really most of the people that we see, and I think most of the people that are seen on the streets or in the marshes, are people who are chronically homeless, who have been homeless for a long time, who are literally homeless. They've had no fixed nighttime residence for probably a year or longer. They might sleep in a temporary shelter. They might sleep on the street. They're really the people that we see in broken down RVs along Valley East Drive, or, camped out in the marsh, or the kinds of people who come to us for shelter. Again, I think that the thing that's the most difficult for me is to talk about the seniors who are coming to us for the first time. And I want to talk to you about one person in particular, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith is a graduate of CR and Humboldt State, and he had graduate courses from Rutgers University with degrees in zoology and biology. His career was very expansive. He was an able-bodied seaman. That's what the title of the job is, able-bodied seaman, and he addressed environmental issues in our oceans. He then started working as a hospital lab supervisor locally. He's a nature enthusiast and a single parent. He was a caretaker locally, and he was working on building his own boat so that he could travel the world over, and he had a stroke. And his ability to earn money or care for himself suddenly ended. Someone offered him a shack so that he would have a place to live. Had no water, no sanitation, no heat. And finally, Arcata House Partnership staff stumbled across him as they were going to their home, and they just saw the shack in the woods on their way to their house, and they stopped to check, and there was this man in very bad shape who couldn't care for himself anymore. And he had this amazing experience he gave to the community for years and years and years. And now here he was in a place where he was abandoned. And our staff befriended him and brought him food. And it took a couple of years for him to feel safe enough to talk to our staff, because other people, Adult Protective Services had been called, and the police had been called, and they were all trying to put him in a home, and he was not at all comfortable with that. And so after a couple of years, he started talking to us about being in a shelter and preparing to be in housing long-term, not in a home. And today, actually in February, he moved into his very own apartment, his very own place. He hadn't had one in years. He's safe. He's connected to medical care. He's connected to social programs, and he sends us thank you notes on a regular basis for treating him with dignity and respect, and not just thinking that he was somebody that needed to be put away. The people we're seeing are you and I, people who went to school, who went to the college, who went to the university, who provided jobs, did work in all fields, and got lost. We're serving people who are social workers balancing their careers and schools, a mother that goes to work every day who lost her housing because she can't afford the high rents, a carpenter supporting his family, but his job is cyclical, and so he can't afford rents in the winter when he's not working. We certainly have Humboldt County employees or other organization employees who are making minimum wage, who can't afford to be anywhere, and so they're living in their cars. And we have an accountant like Jane Doe, another person I want to talk to you about. She's a single parent. She's stably housed right now. She's college educated. She's the victim of domestic violence. She has chronic health conditions, and she's working full time. But at one point in her life, she wasn't stably housed, and she did come to Arcata House Partnership, and she was in our shelter, in one of our family shelters, when she was making minimum wage, fleeing a domestic violence incident, and really struggling to make ends meet. She was connected with CalFresh and other opportunities, and she got on her feet, and she is now paying her own rent. She's you and I. She's working in a social service office, and the people in the desk next to her have no idea that at one point she was in a shelter. There are many people that are at the edge of homelessness. We have opened another food pantry in Valley West that's open every Friday. We have the Wednesday one that's at the Annex in 501 9th Street in downtown Arcata. We are seeing an average now of 150 people a week coming to us for food through the food pantry. That's in addition to all of the other food services that we offer. Most of the people that come to us are very precariously housed and have little money for food. In addition, we support 9 other food pantries weekly, plus 2 food pantries that are open twice a year around holidays. All of this tells us that there are so many more people who are coming to us who need help. And it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for us to see this. It's overwhelming for you to see this, to see people sleeping on benches and all of the trash and the broken down RVs and needles everywhere. We get it. We're overwhelmed. You're overwhelmed. All of this somehow just feels like too much. And so people say to me, well, Darlene, what's Arcata House doing? Here's what we're doing. We have on the top left food programs. Our gleaner picks up about, let me see, 225,000 pounds of food a year from stores and restaurants that have very good food, and they don't want to put it in the landfill, and so they donate it to us, and we appreciate that. That's our gleaner. We have our food pantries. We provide 2, and we also support a total of 9 plus 2 at the holidays. And we provide client support, and that means out of our food truck, or people come to our programs, or people in our shelters, all get fed. We have supportive housing. We have 121 units of housing that we are supporting right now. Some of them are permanent supportive housing. People will be with us forever. Some of them are rapid rehousing, which is similar to Section 8 or housing choice vouchers. And people will be on there for a year or 2 years as we're helping them to get more stably housed and to find ways to support themselves. And we also have some permanent housing where people are paying their own rents and going to work or going to school. We provide case management everywhere. So whatever people need, we have staff that are there to help them understand what services are available and what services they might be able to apply for. We have shelter programs. We have family shelters and adult shelters. We have shelters called Next Step, which is for people coming out of prison. We have the safe parking program. We have extreme weather shelter. During COVID, we opened the tent shelters. We had other shelters where we got some money to put people into hotels during extreme weather. So our shelter programs are forever changing and growing depending on the funding sources and the needs of the people. Are there enough shelter beds? No, not at all. But our shelters are full, and on any given night, we have an estimated 100 people in one kind of our shelter or another. We also provide disaster case management. We are working right now in Rio Del with the people who were most affected by the earthquake, and they became homeless. And when people are homeless, we're called. And so we're down in Rio Del because, as you know, we do serve countywide. We have a special team of people in Rio Del that are working with the victims of the earthquakes down there to try and help them get housed, get stably housed. We have a really robust outreach and engagement process. It's at our one stop, which is at 501 9th Street. We do a lot of connection and referral. That's where people can call if they want to get on the list for other services. Our lunchbox, our poor lunchbox truck, which people have seen out there for years and years, has recently died. And so we're now distributing out of our van, but we're still doing the same work and outreaching to people on the streets and trying to engage them in our services. And with all of that, we are doing that with 52 staff who are all dedicated and all amazing at what they do. We have 13 physical locations, not including our 121 apartments, 4 of which are 24-hour shelter programs. This says 56 staff. Sorry, I thought we had 52, but I think we hired a couple more last week. So thank you for this updated information. And they do work from housing stabilization and helping people learn how to be good tenants, case management to help people learn how to connect to the services they need, food services, data analysts are just really important, right? Data, we need data. We provided over 60,000 hours of staff support last year, and we partner with countless organizations. We are only as good as the organizations that we partner with, because we do housing and food, but people still need healthcare, and they still need CalFresh, and they still need Social Security, and they still need veterans benefits. They still need a landlord who will rent to them, all of those things. And we can't do that without all of our partners, including, thank you to one of you who is on here, our neighbors who know who we are and where our programs are. So last year, if this doesn't feel a little overwhelming already, here's what we did. And I'm going to start right on the very bottom at our shelter programs. So we provided 18,442 shelter bed nights. That means one person, one bed for one night is one bed night. That's pretty amazing. 83 people moved from shelter into permanent housing, which is fantastic. And I'm going up the right side of here. We served 763 people last year. That's more than we've served in any given year prior to this. That tells us more and more people are coming to us because they're in need. The people who we've helped get housed, we had a 98% retention and stability rate, which is pretty amazing. That's very high across the country. And we did that because we provide really intensive staff support. We supported 121 people in housing. We provided over $330,000 in rental assistance. One of the things that's new to us is we now purchased our second affordable housing project. And so we now own 78 units of affordable housing. Again, 250,000 pounds of food was collected. Over 55,000 meals we provided last year. Our food pantries last year were 85 a week. This year we're at 150. We provided over 5,000 referrals to our partners, who are all very important. And one of the things that I really wanted to point out was, out of the 763 people we served, 231 of them were over the age of 62. Those are the kind of numbers that just feel all wrong to me. Somebody my age should not have to worry about where they're going to sleep tonight. We run special programs, the extreme weather shelter, food pantries, summer programs, all of those things. But we always need your support as our neighbors, as our landlords, volunteers for programs. Now, I want to be really careful because I don't want it to sound like we're the only one who's doing work. So here we are. We always need volunteers. That's important. Our website, arcatahouse.org, volunteer page. But there are many organizations in Humboldt County that are all committed to doing this: services to people who are homeless and to people who are hungry. And so as part of the continuum of care, that's the group where all of the housing service providers come together to make sure we're talking about who does what and identifying gaps. There are organizations like Betty Chin, The Mission, Redwood Community Action Agency, Fortuna Advantis. Garberville has several kinds of volunteer programs who are working on homelessness. The Yurok Indian Housing Authority has programs working for people who are homeless. Bear River just got some funding to open some new programs for people who are homeless. The city of Eureka has some street outreach programs that they're working with. The city of Arcata has funded the safe parking program and some street outreach for us. We appreciate that. And for other organizations, right? There's organizations like CUNA and Cooperation Humboldt got some money to do some street outreach. The ambassadors for the city of Arcata are doing some great work at trying to keep people accountable and helping them clean up their messes and helping people to be safe wherever they're camping. All of those things, there were hundreds and hundreds of programs, and we all come together regularly to identify gaps and to try and help people in whatever ways we can, to bring in more money into Humboldt County, to request more funding from the governor, to do lobbying and legislation. We know that housing is a healthcare issue, that housing is a human rights issue, that we want people to say yes in my backyard. We want people to know that almost always we are good neighbors. Once in a while we have people who have some difficulties and we acknowledge that, but we're there and we provide case management and support. We want people to know that there are lots of organizations that are all working together so that we can do the best we can. Does that mean that we have all of the answers? It does not. In my opinion, one of the things that we really have to pay attention to is we have to figure out how we stop people from becoming homeless. At this point, we have to stop people becoming homeless for the first time. or for the second or third time. There's not a lot of diversion money coming into the county right now. So last week I got a call from the city, and here's this older woman. I think they said she's in her 80s, who is about to become homeless. She's going to get evicted because her rents went up. She makes $1,100 a month in Social Security. Her rent just went up to $780 a month. She can't afford that and even get her medicine. And so she's really worried that without some support, she's going to become homeless. We don't have a lot of diversion money in this county. We need some. Absolutely. We all know that. We're all out there looking for that. If you want to advocate to our legislators and senators, that's something to advocate for. We need housing. We need affordable housing. We have lots of people that we see who could afford a reasonable rent, but the rents have increased so much in the last couple of years that many working class people are being priced out of housing. And so we're seeing a lot more working class people who are sleeping in their cars, living in junky vans, trying to sleep wherever they can, go from neighbor to neighbor, couch to couch, without a real way to even identify how to get out of that process. We also know that with affordable housing, there are people who live on disability, who live on lower incomes, who are never going to be able to pay a market rent. So we need subsidized housing for sure. The Housing Authority has brought in hundreds of new vouchers to support people. So has Arcata House Partnership. We manage permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing for the county. We can't find housing units. We're bringing in money to support people, but we can't find housing units. We need landlords. We need you to believe in us and to know that we will do the very best we can to protect your units. We will pay the rent on time. If there's damage, we take care of damage. And we make sure that there's case managers in there all the time. So as fast as we're bringing in support, and by we, I don't just mean Arcata House Partnership, but the continuum of care, as fast as we're bringing in support, we are also really falling short because we just don't have the units. In addition, people need more than just housing and food. They need socialization. They need to believe that they're worthy of something. They need people to believe in them. And so we do have some programs that have been started over the last couple of years who are providing some socialization opportunities as well. And we are so happy to be partnering with those organizations. We believe that people need to be treated as a whole person. We know with just the sheer amount of people who are on the streets, it sometimes gets very frustrating and people just walk over somebody sleeping in the doorway because there's just one more person sleeping in the doorway. Maybe they're a junkie, maybe they have mental health issues, maybe they're not. Maybe they're just down and out and they haven't slept in days and days and days and they're exhausted and they're sick. We need all of this. We need our community to be there. We need you to believe in the people we serve. That's not to say that there are not people with mental health issues. You saw the numbers, about 50% of the people who were reported on the day we did the point in time count had some kind of mental illness or some kind of substance use concern. So we know that that's there. We need more mental health support. We need places for people. We have 20 beds in Semper Byron. So when people are having severe mental health issues, we have 20 beds in the county. That's all. We need all of them. Luckily, a new program's coming. They just started construction last week. Sorrel Leaf so that we're going to have some beds to support youth who have mental health issues. Thank you to that program too. Lots of people are doing lots of things. Does it always feel like that when you're driving down Valley East and there's 20 RVs there all broken down and people leaving their trash outside? No, it feels overwhelming. Does it feel overwhelming for us too? And this is what we do for a living? It does. I want people to put me out of work. If there's nobody else who is homeless and nobody else who's hungry, I will gradually sit on my porch on my rocking chair and enjoy this amazing weather we have here in Arcata. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Since I started here 8 years ago, the number of people who are homeless has increased astronomically. We're seeing more. We're not seeing people coming from out of the area. People are saying to me, Darlene, how many people are local? All of them. We are just really not seeing people coming from out of the area. Most of the people who are chronically homeless are people our staff have known for years and years and years. Many of the people who are becoming homeless for the first time who are coming to us for support are people who have been Arcata citizens for years and years and are becoming homeless for the first time. And so I wish there was a magic wand. I wish there was an answer. I think the answer has to continue to be compassion. The answer has to continue to be fight for more housing. The answer has to continue to be we need wages that can sustain this housing. If there was one thing that I would say, what can we do right now? I'd be like, landlords, stop raising your rent for a minute. Just let people breathe. Look, I'm all about people making money and people becoming, landlords because that's a nice way to earn money. But wait a minute and just let people breathe because rents are increasing faster than salaries are increasing. And so we're just seeing so many people coming to us with families or seniors because they're being priced out of their rents. That's our fastest growing population right now. I don't want to end on a sad note. The good news is there are dozens of organizations that are doing really good work. Many of them I mentioned today. There are even more than that. We're getting support from cities and towns, from the county. We're getting support from the governor's office, who is releasing money as fast as they can for home key projects. We are getting support from federal HUD, who's making sure that the HUD budgets stay protected in the federal budget process. There is a lot of people, a lot of organizations who are working really hard to do some really good work. And many of you here are part of that. I'm looking at the list here. I see volunteers. I see people who make dinner and bring it to our shelter. I see people who are doing socialization programs. I'm seeing people here who are making sure that whatever way they can help and support they do, right? Maybe you brought blankets to our donation drive this week. Maybe you want me to remind you that winter's coming, and if you knit hats and knit scarves so that we can give them out in the winter. Whatever you can do is important. Every little piece is important, and your kindness is too. So with that, I want to open it up for questions. Any questions you have, and to talk a little about what your concerns are.
Does anybody have any questions? You gave a really good talk. I have a couple of questions. Is there anything that can be done by the city council about raising rents? And I was very curious to read about the enormous increases at Sorrel Place because I thought that wasn't viable. I thought they had to keep them within certain limits, but I read an article in the paper or an editorial that somebody said their rent had been practically, gone up 50%.
I did see that, Jane. I'm not sure I have all the answers. We do provide some support to a few people who live in that apartment complex. We have not seen that kind of rent increase. So I was really surprised. Danco knows the rules. I was surprised to hear that that might be the case. We don't have rent control here in Arcata. And I'm not sure that city council could do something. I think having that information out there and somebody looking into whether that was really what happened, or if it was just one person who had to have their rent recalculated because people are required to pay 30% of their income. And maybe there was a miscalculation in the beginning. I don't know. I don't want to speak to that. But yes, there are limits. The people can only raise rents 10% a year. It can be twice a year, 5% each time, but it can't be more than 10% a year to raise rent.
It sounds like from what was written that wasn't the case, that it went up like 25% twice in 1 year. So I was very curious. I know there are arguments for and against rent control. Meredith just commented that had something to do with utilities. So I don't know anything about that. She might. But the other issue, are there other locations? For example, I understand Cal Poly is only going to use one of the motels that had used 3 last year. It's only going to use 1 next year. Can you use some of that hotel space for turnkey, for room?
So that's a good question. Last year they used 1 hotel. They were thinking of using 4 this year. They're only going to use 1 as it turns out. Over in 2022, Arcata House Partnership received a grant, and we did purchase the Days Inn, and it is now being run as a 60-unit apartment building. And Danco did purchase the Red Roof Inn, and that's being run as a 78-unit apartment building. I'm hearing from the neighbors, they're asking us to just take a minute and breathe, and let's not put a lot more housing over here until things settle down. So I really appreciate that. They've been very supportive in the 2 programs that we've put here. Right now, there's not a lot of money coming into the county that allows us to use or to pay for hotel rooms for shelter beds. If that happens, then yes, the owners over here in these hotels are very supportive. So I appreciate that. There's a couple of things coming in the chat. Someone said they didn't fully understand the presentation. So, I'm open to questions about what I might have missed. There's another question about how the annex works. Why did food stop being served from the building instead go all the way up to the park entrance to distribute food? And why are your hours only 1 to 4? So what my response is I'm very happy that we're able to open from 1 to 4 on weekdays as opposed to 0 hours. Right now, the funding for that program is very small, and we are subsidizing that through donations. We don't have a grant to cover those services, but we are very committed to keeping those hours open from 1 to 4. Why did food stop being served from the building and go all the way up to the park entrance? So we have, for as long as I've been here, been serving food up at the park entrance. That's where we have been serving, and we have permission from the city to serve there. During COVID, we did serve for a short amount of time out of the building that we call the annex, but we are now back into serving where we have been historically and where we get to connect with a lot of people and do a lot of outreach. Thank you. The person that said they didn't understand the homeless situation. Thank you. I appreciate that. We don't always understand the homeless situation either, right? We have people who have been upstanding citizens for years and years, and they suddenly get medical bills that are just higher than they can afford, and suddenly they find themselves homeless, or the rents are high, or they lose their jobs, or I mean, the reasons that people become homeless are just so immense. And I think the hardest part of my job is to help people understand that homelessness isn't only about the person with severe mental health issues on the plaza talking to themselves. The homeless issue is so much more than that. It could be somebody sitting next to you in church. It could be somebody in your office. It could be somebody in my office. We opened a shelter for a short time because we had so many staff who were getting terminated from their leases because their leases the rents just got so high, and they couldn't find other apartments. And so we put them up for a short amount of time. And that's what we do for a living all day, every day, right? And our staff couldn't find housing. So it could be people shopping at the grocery store next to you and you may never know it. I know it's people in your children's classroom. We have a lot of children who are food and housing insecure.
Is there,
Oh, go ahead, Jane.
are there places where you could have more parking of people who have to, safe parking? A lot of that has gone into Valley West and it needs to be spread out more if possible. Are there locations you've identified where that could happen? And have you dealt with city council on that or community services?
So, yes, we have a safe parking program. The city funded it. It's just funding is ending soon, and I'm scrambling to try and find funding to continue that. The program's been full almost since the beginning. We had a really slow start in the beginning. Things were a little difficult. Not everyone wants to be part of a program, right? In our safe parking program, you get to be there, you come and go as you want, but you can't do drugs on site, you can't have weapons on site, and you can't have visitors on site because we want to keep people safe. So some people choose not to do that, right? And that's, I think, what we're seeing in Valley East. Our street outreach team is in Valley East almost daily, checking in with people to see, if there's anything we can do for them and how we can get them involved in a program. And people choose whether they want to or not, right? Unfortunately, there are people who choose not to. So can I update you on the safe parking program and what's happening at that space in the future? So the update is it's running. It's very full. We're happy that majority of the people in there are people that go to work every day. So we have a reasonable expectation that we're going to be able to get people housed. We have a really good success rate of getting people housed out of that program because many of them go to work every day so they can afford the rents, but it's still really difficult to find places that people can afford. And we're working really hard to get some funding. Arcata House Partnership has written several proposals to try and get funding to extend that program. We're waiting to hear on what's going to happen with that. I have a meeting, I think, maybe next week with one funder to talk about ways to put some gap funding in there until we hear about these other more permanent funds. So we're all working really hard. The county's supportive of the program, the city's supportive of the program. Arcata House Partnership is here and committed if there's a way that we can continue to do that. Questions about what about safe camping? So during the pandemic in the first year, the city did provide 2 parking lots that we used for camping, for safe camping. And people really appreciated that. They appreciated having a place where they could be. They wanted, though, to have a fence around the camping area so that they could feel safer and that outside people weren't coming in. So we learned a lot about it during those 2 years. We also learned that it's really hard to be in a tent through the winter. It's really hard to be in the tent or to be anywhere in the winter and sleeping under a bush. We get all of that. Right now, there's no plan to open a safe camping program, although we've done it. We have the processes and procedures in order. I think we fine-tuned it really well. And if that's something that happens, you know, that funding comes along and there's support for that, then Arcata House Partnership will be open to that conversation. They're also trying to open a safe parking program in Eureka, so that would also help a lot. A comment here. I'm concerned that short-term vacation rentals are cutting into the housing market. Is that just my imagination? It seems like every week I witness another house renovated and put on the market as a vacation rental. So I don't think that's your imagination. I think that's one of the things that City Council has been talking about. I know in Arcata they have a moratorium on the number of permits they give out. But if other people are opening vacation rentals and the city doesn't know about it and they're not legal ones, there's nothing the city can do to enforce that. So I think we, the housing and homeless community, have been talking about what we do about that. I think about 2.5 months ago, I listened to a presentation that there are a little over 4,000 vacant homes in Humboldt County. People have second homes. They're not generally renting them out. They're just vacant homes. If we have 3,000 people in the county who are homeless on any given day, is what we expect, then I say we have enough housing to house everybody if that housing became available. I think that there are ways to do it, but we have to do it as a community. One of the things that is really, I mean, I'm honored that people say, Arcata House Partnership, what are you doing to stop people from becoming homeless? What are you doing to offer support to people who are becoming homeless or who are homeless? And I'm like, this has to be a community conversation. It has to be a county conversation. Again, I've said several times here, I see one of our neighbors here. How important is that? Because we have other places where we have neighbors who are not so supportive, and it's really difficult for us to help people transition. So everything we do is about partnership. It's about community. It's about working with all of you. It's about working with our city council, who has been very supportive. It's about working with the dozens and dozens of other organizations. We don't provide medical care, but Open Door comes on site and provides medical care to people who are homeless. We don't provide substance abuse treatment, but the county has an office who provides that kind of support. We don't provide mental health crisis intervention, but there are organizations that do. We all have to do it together.
I understand that basically people who are just recently homeless for whatever reason are much easier to find, to integrate back into the community, into the housed community. Is there some way to identify when that's happening? Do they come to you right away, or do they wait too long and end up out on the street for too long? And do you have some way of rating people when they come to you in terms of who should get housing in what priority order?
Well, yes, we do. And unfortunately, it's by necessity. So most of the funding, well, all of the funding Arcata House Partnership gets for housing is for people who are chronically homeless. So people who have been homeless for a year or longer and have a disability. And that could, there's the disabilities are, you know, many that people could have. We don't have, Arcata House Partnership doesn't have any of that diversion money for people who are just becoming homeless or on the edge of becoming homeless. How do we protect people from becoming homeless? We don't want more people on that list. And so there's this gap between people who are housed and people who are on the edge, about to lose housing. They haven't been chronically homeless. They're not homeless for a year or more. They don't have a disability. They're not severely vulnerable. We have to measure all of those things, and there's a gap. There is absolutely. For people, again, diversion, we don't want more people becoming homeless. Newly homeless people who don't fit into any other category. People who have been couch surfing even for a year or longer, but don't have a disability. There's not a lot of funding to support that. We find that out of the numbers of people that call us, I suspect that there are hundreds and hundreds of people who don't call us because they know our waiting list is over 300 people now for people who are chronically homeless, and who have been prioritized, and there are thousands more who will never get on that list, who will never get prioritized because they don't meet the definition of the funding sources we bring in. Now we're doing our very best. We all, the COC, the Continuum of Care, we're bringing in funding as fast as we can, but there are gaps.
Is there land available in Arcata where units such as Betty Chin has just received can be placed? Would the city allow that? Because the city now has some vacant land that they are selling. Is there land available where units like that could be placed?
So I can't answer that. I think the city works really closely with us. I have been over the years trying to convince them that whatever's happening on I Street should include some affordable housing. But I don't have the answer to that, Jane. Sorry.
Yeah.
We have a note in the chat. Housing is subject to supply and demand. My plea is for people to not oppose new housing production and instead to actively support projects to provide more opportunities for all kinds and levels of housing. Please. Thank you to the person who put that there.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Do you have any other issues that you'd like to raise, Darlene?
I want to thank people for being here, for listening. The more people who listen and understand that housing is really an issue across all kinds of people, Homelessness isn't just for that person with severe mental health issues on the plaza. The more people start to understand that we have to look for all sorts of support, and the support starts here with you. Thank you very much.
And how do we go ahead and contact you? Do we contact you directly would you put your contact information in the chat?
I didn't, but arcatahouse.org, depending on whether you want to volunteer, go to our website if you want to volunteer. There's an address there if you want general information. There's an address there if you want to contact our annex to ask about supportive services. That all of that information is there. If you want information about our food pantry, that's really the best way. And then if you want to contact me specifically, then my email is there too, dspoor@arcatahouse.org.
And in terms of donations, how can they, if they want to donate clothing or things like that? Same deal.
So you can donate online, but we're doing quarterly donation drives now. We just did one on Saturday, because we just don't have the staff to take donations in every week. Thank you, Florence, for putting our website address there. So
Yeah.
we will have another donation drive. This is August, September, October, November, just before the holidays. Please make hats, make scarves, knit away, take all that extra yarn out of your closets and start knitting for the winter, and we would be very happy to distribute them.
Thank you so much, Darlene, and thank you all for coming, and obviously any help that you can give to Arcata House Partnership would be very welcome. And I want to thank you all for being part of the Brown Bag Lunch Program at OLLI. And please, if you haven't renewed your membership, please do so. And on top of that, this is our last one for the summer session, and we'll start again on September 18th. So we look forward to seeing you again in the fall. We're about done with the summer session. There are a couple classes left, but this is about it. So have a wonderful summer, and we'll see you in the fall.
Thank you, Jane. That was impressive.
It was a great presentation, Darlene. Thank you.
It was truly. Thank you.
Okay, time to go.